What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Unplayable. I'm D-House here with Jim with a little bit of a draft strategy video. We haven't done something like this before, but we thought we would look specifically at one color. We chose green in single aspect to look at these cards through the lens of draft. How do you think about these cards? When do you want to pick up these cards when they're being passed? There's going to be some limits to what we're able to evaluate because, you know, in Star Wars Limited, you don't draft in a vacuum. You draft 3 leaders first, and that always impacts the cards that you're looking at. So we'll try to make some concessions here and recognize that some of our feedback will be limited, but... Oh, limited. That was a good pun, right?
For that limited formatting, of
yes.
course.
But we want to talk about these cards because we just thought that'd be fun to do them. And if people like it, we'll keep going. We got some good feedback on our podcast where we talked about draft a ton. So we may do more limited content like this as well. So you ready, Jim?
Oh, so ready. Yeah, we're going to have some great takes, some terrible takes. Excited for all the feedback on all of that. But yeah, like you mentioned, we're just doing the single aspect cards, not heroic, not villain, because these are the ones you're most likely to draft. Stay flexible as long as possible. So excited to work through them.
Right, early on. Because, yeah, that's a great point. Because early on, if you lock in too fast to one or the other, that could be a negative thing. So these are the cards that you always want to be evaluating, or learning how to hate draft the person next to you because they're on Hondo and you don't want to give them the smuggle stuff. So
that's right.
So we're not going to do the double green stuff because those are double aspect. You're still paying extra. I've never seen anyone go monocolor in draft to this day, and I've drafted, I don't know, 25 times at this point. So
yeah, at least at this point, they've balanced each aspect enough where that doesn't really seem like a viable strategy. It's only if the double green card would just be still good 2 resources higher, and that's the only time you'd consider it. Like Command was a great one, Cunning was a great one.
Yeah,
that you'd want to pay 6 for, but not these.
Right. All right, let's jump in. We're going to start with Warzone Lieutenant, a little 1-cost 2/2 vanilla trooper. Well, what are you thinking when you see this little lieutenant?
I am throwing that to the back of the pack and sending it on its merry way. There's something to be said for green to kind of like try to flood the board. I personally haven't ever drafted this card unless it truly is just the last card in the pack. I think a lot of the 1 costs with bounties are typically better. So I don't know, 2/2 stats and wasting a card for that has always been not ideal for me. But you seem like you have a take here, and I am so intrigued to hear it.
Yeah, I was a little shocked at your feedback because, well, okay, it is narrow. I think in general, I do agree with you. The one exception is if you have Rey as one of your leaders, Warzone Lieutenant may be a easy take. Because with Rey, you're paying 1, you're dropping this, and then Rey's ability, you're immediately turning it into a 3/3 on turn 1, which is, we don't have Battlefield Marines in this set. Like having a 3/3 on turn 1 is very powerful. So if you're in Rey, Warzone Lieutenant is actually a really solid pick. And there's a lot of green stuff that synergizes with her in general.
Yeah, I think blue-green is typically where I try to go if I'm drafting Rey. So that makes sense there for sure. I still wouldn't take it typically in the first half of a pack. Like, it's not the first one I'm like looking at. There's so many like other like 1/4s or 2/3s that I like a little bit better. But it's definitely playable in certain circumstances. And we can talk about like the niche ideas for each of those. Rey is, of course, a common leader that's very drafted.
Yeah.
So that instance definitely comes up a lot.
Yep, for sure. And yeah, and as we go through this, I think it's important to highlight specific leaders. If you're on these leaders, pay more attention to these cards because I think that's an important piece of this. So speaking of which, the next one will definitely be a specific leader one, but for the most part. But Collection Star Hopper, 2 cost, 2/2, Underworld Vehicle Fighter with Smuggle 3 in green. So the obvious response to this is if you're running Hondo, oh, baby. Yes, please. I mean, this is run in premier Hondo decks. So being able to drop this and immediately get a 3/3, theoretically, it doesn't have to be, but a 3/3 ship in space with Hondo is very good. It also, Smuggle gives you card advantage. You're not paying the typical 2 tax with this Smuggle. It's just 1. So I actually really like this guy in Limited. What about you?
Yeah, I've not played nearly as much Hondo as you have. I think with mercenary gunships being so common of like a cheap unit that you're wanting to get in colorless. That's my only pushback against even the 3/3 is that the mercenary gunship can trade into it favorably, but that's kind of a narrow example. I only like this in like a Hondo, or potentially if you get Boba Fett, you can play it there since smuggle counts as a keyword to give something a +1 attack. But again, similar to the 1 cost 2/2, it's fairly narrow for when I want to play it, but it's okay in some circumstances. You can talk about Rey as well, since you can buff it to a 3/3 on turn 2 by doing something like that.
Yeah, also the Underworld tag is not insignificant when you're thinking about Cad Bane's, you know, Lady Proxima is another one that gets tossed around a lot. I don't think it's that good in draft, but I think having something Underworld from McClunky is that's always a good thing too. So next up, we've got the Gamorrean Retainer, or Gamorrean Retainer, however you want to say it. It's a 2 cost 3/2 Underworld, and while you control another green unit, this unit gains Sentinel. And it's a common. We didn't note that what rarity these are, but it is a common.
Right. The other two are commons as well. I actually do really like this card. I think for like quick turn 1 plays, getting a Sentinel out there to protect whatever your turn 2 play is great. If I'm going green, this is one that I actually have pretty high on my list for like commons that I'm excited to draft. I don't want a ton of these because you just want enough early game plays to kind of get you to the late game. I think from what I've seen, they're either like very aggressive lists or like Ray lists that are just trying to go super late game, draft every 6+ card they can, and win the war of attrition that way. So I think a few of these is good just to kind of get you to the late game, but I think this allows you to play a couple extra bomb, like end of the game kind of cards, because it'll stall the game long enough.
Yeah, same. I love this guy. Even if you don't get Sentinel, I think you're still pretty happy with this guy. Just being a 3/2, hitting for 3 turn 2 is a good thing. So, and another Underworld tag for the Underworld synergy decks.
Right.
Big fan of this. Big fan of this guy. All right, let's move on. Privateer Crew. 2 cost 2/2 with Smuggle 6, because when played using Smuggle, give 3 experience tokens to this unit, and it is an uncommon. So we've got another Smuggle card that potentially works great with Hondo. Ironically, the times I've drafted Hondo, which is quite a few times, I've never seen this card passed to me because it is an uncommon. So I've never gotten the chance to drop this guy into a 6/6 or a 5/5 and throw an experience to somebody else. So in theory, I think it's fine. You know, again, late game when you're on 6 and being able to drop a 5/5 unit is not in draft. Like that sounds crazy in Premier, but in draft, a 5/5 unit can usually withstand an attack from something and potentially 2-for-1 your opponent. So I think this is decent.
I would say this one for me is more of like a filler for like your cost curve. So it's like if you are just needing some of those mid-range cards, I think I'm okay to play it. Usually just like a vanilla card like this, though, isn't something I'm super excited about. I mean, in theory, you could play it in like, a Finn deck, I guess, and turn those experiences into shields. And
first Finn reference of the episode.
There it is. But I'm just like, there's not a ton to really do with this. Playing this as a 2/2 for 2, you're never happy about. So for me, this would be a card that like, if I went too wide or like tried to draft three different aspect colors to give myself some flexibility, it may sneak in there and I'll find some use for it. But this is not something I'm highly looking for. I think even if I was looking at Hondo, 6 cost 6/6 is like absolute best case scenario, and it's like, it's fine.
Yeah. There's a niche scenario with Gar Saxon where Gar Saxon gets +1 to an upgraded unit. So when this comes out, it immediately is a 6/5 instead on the turn where you're flipping Gar Saxon. But
this really is if you are just low on 5 and 6 costs, like they just weren't passed to you, you can use this as such.
Yep. All right, let's move on to, honestly, one of my favorite cards. If I'm in green, this is one of my favorite cards to see passed. Scanning Officer. It's a 2 cost 2/3 Imperial Official. When played, reveal 3 enemy resources. Defeat each resource with the Smuggle keyword revealed this way. For each resource defeated this way, its controller puts the top card of their deck into play as a resource. The important thing to note, if you're new to this, is that when the resource comes into play, it comes into play exhausted unless otherwise noted on the card. So in theory, if you're in green and you're going first in a draft and you play Scanning Officer, and your opponent had resourced 1 or 2 cards with Smuggle, you could essentially reveal them, destroy them, and then they get resources back exhausted, and then they just don't have a first turn play because they don't have resources to play, which is pretty spicy.
Yeah, it definitely lets you get off to the races. And usually people will put their smuggle cards in first, especially with the draft list. It's not like so well tailored that you know exactly what to resource and what not to, that you're like, well, if that gives me the option to play it later, let me just put it in there. And this card's an uncommon, so you'll see it a lot, but I don't think most people are resourcing with this in mind. And so you can definitely get some quick early, hey, I got you on turn 1 or turn 2, depending on if you get the early initiative or not.
Yep.
But that'd be pretty cool.
I think this still has value late game. Again, because we're talking about an environment where it's only Shadows of the Galaxy. So the possibility of having Smuggle in their resource row is very high compared to like Premier. So I really like this. I had one draft game at Gen Con where I dropped this. There's probably 5 or 6 resources out, and I revealed 3 resources, and 2 of them had Smuggle. So now he's 2 resources down at the beginning of the turn, which really like messed up his curve and felt good. I think that was against Nick Obi. I think that was against Taxter, if I remember correctly. But I love this guy. Or this girl, I guess. I can't really tell. But
yeah, definitely solid. Even if it whiffs, it's okay. It's still a 2 cost 2/3, which is pretty good stats for a turn 1 play. So
yeah.
It's not too bad either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it hits, it's awesome.
Love it. All right, moving up to the 3s. We got Cobb Vanth, 3/2 Fringe Official. Search the top, or when defeated, search the top 10 cards of your deck for a unit that costs 2 or less and discard it. For this phase, you may play that card from your discard pile for free. This is a rare. You're not going to see it a lot. But when you see it, do you take it? Do you?
This is a card that I think everyone started so high on Cobb Vanth, and then it has like very quickly like tapered down the expectations. I think it's fine. I think just keeping units on board is good, even if it's just a 2 cost. There's not a ton of 1 or 2 costs that you're just like slamming down on the table with this, but just to always have units out there is solid. Usually in limited formats, you're just trying to like outvalue your opponent, and this does allow you to do that. So I don't think this is like a bomb card that as many people thought it would be. It can for sure have some potential to do that. But I'd still consider it. Like if I saw this as more rare, I'd probably be like, I'll probably still take it, unless there's just something crazy in the list.
Yeah. I mean, on one side, it's 30 card decks. So searching the top 10 cards, you're thinking about 33% of your deck. But also, I found that in most draft decks, I don't have a ton of 2 costs or less because I'm really looking for those bombs that are going to make more of a difference later. Like I'm not so worried about the aggro stuff early on. The one exception is I did draft like a really low to the ground Cad Bane red deck that wanted to do that. But in most drafts, I feel like I don't have that many 1 or 2 costs, like maybe 5 or 6. So the possibility of whiffing feels too strong for this to be extremely valuable. So I'm not too high on Cobb.
That's fair. Yeah, I just like that you can pretty much always have a unit out on the board because there's a lot of upgrades, especially in this set, that you just have something to play them on.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think this is even close to a bomb card. 3 costs for 3/2 of stats is undervalued. But again, you're typically going to hit something on the when defeated trigger, so it's at least doing fine.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm excited to talk about this next one. Outlaw Corona, 3 cost, 3/5. It's an underworld vehicle capital ship. A little UFO thing with the bounty. Put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So 3 cost, 3/5 in space.
Yeah, if this is a hyperspace, I'm taking it every single time, just because the red pops on that card.
I've got 2 hyperfoils of this one for some reason.
Yeah? Dang. You lucky dog.
Yeah, I know.
This one's tricky, though. It really is. I think I like it more often than not. It's not something I'm like drafting highly, but 3/5 in space can just steamroll some stuff. I don't think the like ramp hurts me enough to be like, oh, I'm never gonna do this. It's only if it's like, okay, the leader comes out. But if you're already past the like leader flip turn, I'm tossing this out there and feeling great.
Yep.
Because it's hard to kill, like really hard to kill. Millennium Falcons can kill it pretty quickly, and so a lot of people are playing those. But there's not a ton, and so I think like because of that.
How much does ramp once you're at like so used to the Falcon, so at six, how much does ramp really matter that late in the game? Like early on, I think you could really get some value, but by the time this is taken out, I'm not convinced that the negatives outweigh the positives here. I mean, a 3-5 in space is just going to stick there for a long time. I've had lots of games where I played this and it just stayed out there for the whole game. It just did, because they didn't want to sink multiple stuffs into it. Their mercenary gunships and their or their punishing ones or whatever. It just wasn't worth it for them. So I think this is actually pretty solid in draft. You have to be a little cautious. Like if I'm sitting across from Bosk, I might think twice about playing this. This might get resourced against Bosk.
I'm definitely scared of the Concord Dawn Interceptor as well. That's the 1/4 Sentinel blue hero card.
Sure.
Again, Ray is drafted, like you just will have 1 or 2 Rays in your draft pod pretty much every time.
Yep.
I'm assuming that Ray's opened up. But that card can do some work against this for sure.
Yeah. At least you're not forced to attack it. And because it only hits for 1 or 2, if Ray goes after it. But again, then it's like, well, they're putting a lot of energy into killing this thing. I don't know.
Yeah. But it also helps kill that card, because in Ray, they can buff that. I mean, that card is so good against Ray or into Ray. Yeah. Getting that to potentially 3/6 over a couple turns.
Yeah.
Crazy.
There are things that you have to be aware that you are giving your opponent. They're just things that cards that give your opponent value just if you have a unit with bounty on it. So, like I mentioned Boss, but there's some other stuff in red that I think you have to be aware of. So it's not always an autoplay, but usually I'm not sad about putting it in my deck and letting it sit. So speaking of which, the next one is a perfect example of this. The Reputable Hunter. It's a 3-cost, 3/4 bounty hunter. If an enemy unit has a bounty, this unit costs 1 less to play. So this coming in for 2 if you do play the Outlaw Corona.
Oh man, I love this card.
Yeah.
3-cost, 3/4 is just good vanilla stats.
Yep.
Like that's kind of the standard that you're looking for. So it's
totally
fine as is. If you're able to get a Jabba, it's awesome. If you're playing Bosk, you probably have great opportunities. And there's actually some bounties that I am totally happy to draft that we'll talk about here in a little bit. That I think this card's really great. It's something that I want to draft fairly highly. Again, it's not the card that's going to win you the game, but it's going to get you to the point where you can win the game and make some really favorable trades.
Yep.
And Bounty Hunter is actually a pretty reasonable synergy to try to build around, even in draft, especially if you're able to get like an early like Toro. There's some really cool things you can do.
Yeah.
That just having Bounty Hunter and Underworld, those are kind of the two tags that I get most excited to see.
Yeah, the little neutral initiate when you have another bounty hunter and it's a 1 cost, then you get to do 2 damage.
Yeah.
Very good. But yeah, I with Toro, this thing is pretty awesome. If you can pull a Toro at all, definitely take Toro. Even as a 3-cost 3/5, it's very good. But having this in there, you're totally right. This thing is solid. And there are just so many units again that the Clone Deserters, the little 1-cost thing. The Cartel Turncoat, these things that just naturally have bounty. Like even if you don't have Jabba, if you're not playing Jabba, a lot of times first turn, you can just the Hylaban Enforcer. If you're running against Kira, like you just drop this, you're like, all right, cool, thanks for helping.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Yeah, and then in Bosk, you're probably trying to draft the 0-cost upgrades anyway, so it's that much easier to pull that off.
Sure. Okay, next up we've got we're hitting the 4s. The Kirax Heavy Fighter. It's a 4-cost 3/3 vehicle fighter with Overwhelm, and on attack you may exhaust another friendly unit. If you do, this unit gets +3/+0 for this attack. Jim, have you ever pulled off that on attack ability with this card?
Sure haven't, but in theory it seems cool.
Yeah. I don't know. Gosh, sometimes in draft you just don't have enough space presence, and you see this and you're like, I need something in space, because if they go wild in space and I don't have answers, then I'm going to be in trouble. So I have drafted this. I'm never really that excited about it. It's just sort of like, okay.
I agree. This card is usually like one of the first green cards that I'm cutting in my list if I did have to draft it for some reason. That I don't love it, to be honest. Even with it being a space unit, only having 3 health dies to so much. I'm not thrilled about it. It's like, yeah, in theory it's really cool, but it's just weird to try to pull off. So
yeah. All right, moving on.
Cool.
We've got the Weequay Pirate Gang, 4-cost, 3/3 Underworld with Ambush and Smuggle 5. So you've got Hondo on the art. It's telling you what to do.
Right.
Definitely, if you're in Hondo, you definitely want this. It's very good. Because when Hondo smuggles this out, it's essentially, it can ambush as a 4/4 if you need that, which is like 4 alarm stats. But it's coming out at 5. But if you don't need the extra, you can always throw that experience on someone else. I really like this. I think ambush is always a good thing in draft because removal isn't that easy to get your hands on, especially in this set too. A lot of it is conditional capture and stuff like that. It's not like open fires. So having basically a 4-cost, 3 damage spell, sometimes that's good enough to get you out of a pinch when you need it. So I like this guy.
It's fine. I like it. It's usually making my list just because of the flexibility. But again, this is not the bomb card that's going to win you the game, but it's really good. There's not a ton of removal in green, and so this is one of the few options that you have, at least on the ground side, to take care of something. So
also
I like what you said, though, just about it not even being like in a Hondo deck, like a 4-cost, 3 damage is sometimes just what you need.
Yeah. Also kind of works with Cad Bane too as Underworld because you can play this, you can trigger the ping, which if Cad Bane's out there already, it's a double 2 damage. So then this can ambush on top of that. So it actually works pretty well with Cad Bane as well. All right. I love this next one. 5-cost Discerning Veteran. It's a 3/4 bounty hunter. When played, this unit captures an enemy non-leader ground unit. And notably, there's no like power less than this. There's no cost limit. It's just whatever you want, you get it. You see that pirate tank? That pirate tank is mine. You see that what's one of the Chewbacca? You dropped a Chewbacca. No, that's mine now. I'm a big fan of this. I had one draft where I got 3 of these, and I felt so powerful. Like they would finally kill the veteran, and then I just drop another one and just get it back.
Right.
I'm a big fan of this guy, and he's bounty hunter for Tauros Synergy if you got it.
I would say everything you just said is exactly why I love this card. I think capture is actually really strong and limited. Less so for all of the weird cards that want captured units, more so just as like soft control or like soft removal. They typically don't have a quick answer if you're playing this card because you're getting rid of the threat that could have killed it. And so you have to, of course, be strategic of when to play it, but you can play around a lot. And even just sometimes turning that ready unit to capture it, they kill this, it then comes in exhausted, so they don't get to use it for that turn. Can be such a good tempo swing.
Yep. All right. We got a little bit of a throwback to set 1. Moving on to Mercenary Company. 6-cost, 5/5 Underworld Trooper with Ambush and Overwhelm. I feel pretty confident to say this is often a bomb. Like this is something I'm always, if I'm in green and I see this, I'm very happy to see that. I mean, it kills most things with 5 damage. It works with Cad Bane with the Underworld stuff. It can go through a Sentinel and get the last bit of damage on their base. It's just good.
This is the card that I had in mind for why I don't like Privateer Crew nearly as much, because this is that cost, but actually does things when you play it. It doesn't have the experience, so yes, there's things you can do with the actual experience upgrades, but there's also a ton of upgrade hate in this set, so it could also be like to your detriment. Where, this coming out, the same reason that we're playing Weequay for 5, I believe? Or was it 4? It's 4 for 3/3.
Weequay was 4 cost, but 5 smuggle.
Right. So this is coming as it's more expensive, but that 5 attack kills so much.
Yep.
And it's one that, like, because it has Overwhelm, your opponent just has to kill this thing. So usually it's like a 2-for-1 very quickly, which you're feeling great about.
And this is one that's like staple to Boba Hero. So if you got Boba Hero and you're going that direction, this is always Ambush Overwhelm for 6 instead. He also comes on the Boba flip turn, so if Boba's out there, you've got a static 6/5, and that also takes the focus off of Boba because they've got to kill this thing. So really like this guy with Boba. I should have said that for the Weequay Pirate Gang too. I think that with Hero Boba is very good because it always ambushes at 4. So
and for those who haven't looked at this at a ton, Boba Fett and Hondo are the 2 common green leaders that we're drafting, and then Jabba and Hunter are the 2 rare leaders. You will not hear us talk about Hunter as an option because it's just not good. Don't play it.
Don't do it.
Somebody's going to find it and clip this and make me look silly, and I can't wait for that to happen. But as of now, don't play Hunter. Jabba, definitely you can build around, but the rare leaders are very rare to actually find. So we're mostly looking at Hondo and Boba Fett with this in mind. Obviously, all leaders technically can have a green base, but at least 50% of the time we're looking at it through that lens.
Yep. All right. And the last unit is the Arquitens Assault Cruiser. It's an 8-cost space unit, 7/8 vehicle capital ship with ambush. When this unit attacks and defeats a non-leader unit, put the defeated unit into play as a resource under your control. And it is a rare, so I have not seen this too often. I've definitely drafted it, but I don't know that it's ever hit the table for me.
Yeah, this is one you do draft because there's not a ton of late game bombs to just take over the game. And unfortunately, Rivals Fall is just so common. You're going to be playing against a lot of blue.
It's literally common, not just so common.
It's actually a common card. And so pretty much everyone who's in blue at some capacity will draft one Rivals Fall. And so you play this, they Rivals Fall, that turns kind of a wash. You're still fine with
ambush.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't have Overwhelm though, so it needs to stay for a turn before it's hitting the base. But it is the card that you're playing in the late game because you can get to late game pretty quickly. Yep. A lot of times this is kind of when your deck is down to 10 or less cards. So it's that oh gosh, I need to get to the finish line. So you do draft it. Like you said, though, it doesn't hit the table a ton. But when it does, and if they don't have a response, you're just like, well, I guess I win. Yeah. Which is what you want for a late game card to do.
Yeah. Now, the ramping piece, again, I don't know how much it matters. Unless you have a bunch of out of aspect stuff that costs extra and you can do some stuff with that. But
yeah,
I think this is they ambushed you with their Falcon. You hit them with your assault cruiser, and you just do that whole back and forth.
Yeah, agreed. It's mostly 7/8 ambush is what you're looking at here.
Yeah,
8/8 if you play it in Boba Fett.
Yeah. All right, moving on out of the units. Now we're into some new territory. First one is a bounty. It's a 1-cost bounty hunter's quarry. Doesn't add any stats. It just says attached unit gains bounty. Search the top 5 cards of your deck or 10 cards instead if this unit is unique for a unit that costs 3 or less and play it for free. Love it.
This card's crazy. I'll let you go first on your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, it's so good. And I think the reason I like it better than Cobb Vanth is, again, it costs 1. So it's almost like negligible loss. It turns on all of the bounty stuff like the Reputable Hunter and some other red stuff. Searching for a 3 cost or less, I feel like I tend to draft heavy on the 3s. It always feels like it's giving you good value. I mean, if you're running stuff like Bosk, it does it. I've never seen it whiff. But even if it does, you only gave up, one resource, 1 card. It's just a great card. It's really good.
Yeah. If I have Bosk as an option, I've legitimately pack 1, pick 1 this card. Woo. I've turn 1 played Dengar, play this, use Bosk, and now I have a Dengar and a 3-cost out, and they just basically conceded on the spot. Aggressive isn't too common in draft, but this card definitely lets you just get an absolute just strangle on the game. When we did our event against Golden Dice, I pulled that off against Scott to sorry, I have a 2-cost and a 3-cost in turn 1, which it just gets nasty. And so, yeah this card is crazy, especially if you can get it onto a unique unit. Top 10 cards means you're just not going to whiff. And so there's so many good 3-costs too in this game that if you can pull this off early, but yeah, even late game, it's great. Any sort of bounty synergy, I want this card. It's good if you're not playing bounties, but it's a lot slower. And so, I think this card single-handedly makes Bosk approachable in this format.
Yeah, so good. All right, next up, we've got Legal Authority. This is a 2-cost upgrade attached to a friendly unit. It does give +2 health. And it also says, when played, attached unit captures an enemy non-leader unit with less power than it. And it is a rare, so I don't see it too often. Yeah. I love this. You mentioned the 2 common leaders are Boba Fett Hero and Hondo at common. Notably, they do come out at 6. So if you can drop them and put Legal Authority on them, you can capture anything with less like 5 or less on the space side, on the ground side.
It is power, not cost on it.
Oh, you're right. It does say that. Yeah. I don't know why I was thinking that. I must be thinking of I'm thinking of Relentless Pursuit. That's why I'm confusing them. So yeah, I mean, so I like it. I mean, I like it on leaders because leaders usually have so much more health and they're usually harder to kill. So if you can play this on Boba Fett or Hondo, that puts they both start with 7 health, so it gives them 9 health at that point, and it's just really tough to kill them at that point. So I enjoy this. I don't think it like breaks the game or it's like the most insane thing, but I think it's pretty solid removal.
Yeah, agreed. I like some of the other capture options better. It's less restricted, but capture is still so good that I'm still happy to take this. I think this is like a pack 3 pick 1 potential though, but I'm not risking my entire draft off of this card where I think I would for some of the other rares. But yeah, capture is awesome and really gets you to the late game, especially if you're able to draft some like later game stuff.
Love it. All right, we got 8 more to go. Price on your head, 2 cost upgrade. This is another bounty. Attached unit gains bounty. Put the top card of your deck into play as a resource.
I can go first. I do like this card, but so much less than the Bounty Hunter's Quarry.
Yeah, agreed.
Ramp is way better in Premier than it is in Limited.
Yeah.
This is like a turn 1 specifically with Bosk is okay, but it sometimes just too slow. Like you're losing so much tempo by playing this that like by the time you actually are able to kill that unit, you're just too far behind.
Yeah.
It's still fine, but I'm drafting this way later than I am the other bounty card.
Agreed. I just don't like this in draft. I don't know that I've played it. I think the only way that I've picked it is at the end of a pack. It's just not, like you said, just ramp isn't as good in draft. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not as good as it is because you can't necessarily play to specific curves, and so I just don't like it.
I will say Spark Hope is one that I would actually pick compared to this though, but that's because you're playing units early that are likely to die. That Spark of Hope is pretty easy to turn online. This card is like as long as they don't bounce it, it'll eventually die. Yeah. But Spark of Hope, you get to kind of determine when that ramp is actually happening, where this could take a couple turns for you to actually kill that thing.
Yep. All right, the Darksaber. This card's trash. We might as well just skip it.
Take this every single time you see it.
Yeah, Darksaber 4 cost upgrade adds +4 on attack, +3 health attached to non-vehicle unit while playing this upgrade on a Mandalorian unit. Ignore its aspect penalty. Attached unit gains on attack, give an experience token to each other friendly Mandalorian unit. And it is a legendary. I think this is a pack 1 pick 1. Not just for the value, but for this thing just is a major bomb in the right scenario.
You almost always want to put this on your leader more so than the other units because those can get captured. Your leaders cannot get captured. Where if it does get captured, this gets discarded, so it doesn't stay with the unit. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I wonder what it would have been if they messed with capturing card. You get to take their upgrades.
Oh gosh, yeah, that'd be wild.
Like thematically it makes sense, but I'm so glad they didn't go that route. But yeah, the +4 attack on a leader is crazy. Always take this card if you see it.
Pretty wild. And I mean, you should pay attention to the whole like aspect penalty thing too. That I mean, if you're in Gar Saxon Red, there's a lot of Mandalorians in there. There's a lot of dropping on him. They're getting extra power from it as well. So just taking this, I think you'd be crazy to pass it unless there was like something so clearly obvious. But man, this is crazy.
Okay, fine.
There you go. I have a very fond memory of playing a Darksaber on my hero Boba and a legal authority. So it was just like a wrecking machine, man. It was pretty wild. So this is an easy one. All right, commission 1 cost event. Search the top 10 cards of your deck for a bounty hunter item or transport card. Reveal it, draw it, and it does have Smuggle 3 at uncommon.
Yeah, I actually do like this card. The Smuggle ability is pretty sweet on there. Like, this is one that I'm okay to put down early. Again, that's where I'm not thinking scanning officer is going to come hit me. I'm very sad when it does hit me. But yeah, being able to cycle through your deck, again, only having 30 cards, top 10 cards is a good amount of your deck. So if you have a specific bounty hunter, like if you drafted a Toro, this helps you get that pretty quickly. A lot of the space units are transports, so it's pretty easy to get those. And if you happen to get a Darksaber, you want to find that item as quickly as possible.
There you go.
I've been working on a build recently that plays 3 Darksabers and a couple commissions just to try to get this on. I think it's an Lando deck, just to try to get a Darksaber on Lando turn 3 every single game if possible, which is just kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're playing like an upgrade heavy kind of style, the items are great. Bounty Hunter synergy is great. If you're not going a certain like tribal strategy like that, this card is way less good, but it definitely has play.
Yeah. I don't think this is bad for draft. I just feel like it's usually my number 31 or 32 card in the deck that gets cut at the end. I don't think it's a problem if you do draft this. Obviously, the Hondo smuggle stuff is a thing where you're getting a added bonus. I just end up saying nah. I'm gonna stick to units and go from there. So,
but think of how much quicker you could find your jetpack on that Hondo build.
That's true. Yeah.
Come on.
Gosh. When we get to our yellow version of this video,
work with me here.
All right. Then we got outflank, 1 cost, green, attack with 2 units, 1 at a time. Man.
If this had smuggle for 3, I would actually consider playing it. I think because I have to keep it in my hand. I don't ever draft this card.
I don't think I've ever
not
played
even
this.
tried it in limited. I think this is a potential like win the game because you smuggled it. I could potentially see some options to come over the top where they're planning like, okay, I can dodge this attack but not 2 attacks.
So if you draft 3 tech and all of your resources have smuggle, maybe
exactly.
You take this. Yeah.
It's one of those win more cards because that means that you already have 2 units out that are able to attack. That like essentially you were going to do this to either win the game or destroy their massive unit to help you win the game. Where I don't think the action cheating helps you enough to like warrant a like card in your deck.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of awesome cards that you can smuggle out, timely intervention. Play a unit from your hand. Give it ambush for this phase. And smuggle 2. I love
Crazy
this
card.
I mean, come on.
I love this card.
If you're in green and you see this pass to you, it's real hard to say no to this. I mean, just the fact that you can smuggle it, amazing. And even if you don't smuggle it, it's just answers to problems all the time. Great card.
I actually like taking 2 of these. I think typically you'd be like, oh, you might take 1 to ambush something, but you pull this off once and your opponent's like, whoa, that was cool. And they almost like turn their brain off that you could just do that again. Mm-hmm. And so like back-to-back late game plays of ambushing in like a bomb card to destroy their board and keep a unit alive, you're just won. And this is a card, again, I'm just resourcing immediately, letting it chill in my resource pool. But if I happen to draw it later on and can ambush only for 1, I'm feeling great about that.
Yep.
You're not trying to like maximize your resource efficiency every single turn like you are in Premier. Ambush is nasty. And there's a lot of cards with Overwhelm too that you can be looking for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sweet card.
Sweet. Here's an interesting one. Moment of Glory, 3 cost. Give a unit +4/+4 for this phase with our good old buddy FN2199.
That's right.
For all the Destiny fans out there. All right, so this is a perfect example of a card I would never play in Premier, but in draft is not a must play, not a must draft, but sometimes this thing just saves your butt. I mean, to turn Salacious Crumb into a 5/7 that can, just murder a unit and or whatever. I mean, sometimes it's removal, sometimes you're pushing it. I have had games where I drafted 2 of these and was able to +8/+8, to just push a ton of damage and put them on the heel, put them on their heels. So, this is a card. Don't completely neglect in draft. I think this can actually do some pretty crazy things.
Yeah, I love taking 1 or 2 of these if I'm in green. Exactly like you said. There's so many just random circumstances that comes up. Limited is a format like you cannot plan for everything, so it's almost better to plan for nothing. But with Moment of Glory being a common card, I always have to be thinking like, okay, if they attack me with this, I am 4 damage away from death, and you're having to like make some weird trades because of that. Like I am always taking 1, hopefully 2 of these if I can.
Yeah,
definitely not this... 3 or more, but
yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, that's probably overkill. But imagine playing this on your Village Protectors, your little 2/2 Sentinel. normally they can be like, all right, I'll just take care of it real easy. But if you turn that into a 6/6 for the round, and they've got 3, they're like, I'm not wasting all these units into that thing. Like, you could time lock them a little bit.
Yeah, completely. And obviously, like, your unit will typically die at the end of that turn because it loses the 4th health that it just gained, and the damage stays on it. But it's done so much work already. Like you just said, I love putting this on Sentinel units and holding this back for the end of the turns where they're not expecting more damage out of your hand is awesome.
Yeah. All right, take captive. 3 cost. A friendly unit captures an enemy non-leader unit in the same arena. No power limits, no cost limits. It just has to be in the same arena, and it is a common.
Yep. It's so sick.
I love this.
I love take captive.
Yep.
Yeah. It just... Read this as Bomb Destroyer. They finally get to a turn where they can play their bomb card, and you just say, I want that, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I like capturing onto my leaders and protecting them as much as I can. And so, like, the 6 cost flip turn for Hondo and Boba here, I'm usually thrilled to whatever big thing they play that turn, just say, thank you, I'll take that. And then you're attacking with your leader still. They've lost their entire turn tempo and having to really scramble. Take captives are sweet.
Yep. I love take captives. I mean, and especially when you can draft some of those like discerning veterans, the 5 cost 3/4 guy, and these. You can just really wreck their turns and just slow them down, because when they get the units back, if they do kill it, they do go back exhausted. So sometimes it's like, all right, well, just stalling out long enough to win.
Yeah.
So
I do want to mention one common villain green card, and that's Pirate Battle Tank, because that's one that is just such a bomb that you're always drafting if you're in villain and looking to green, that you don't want to necessarily capture with the battle tank, but having that card out, anything you have behind that just captures and just gets to stay alive for the most part, because they're having to just chew through 6 health of a Sentinel with 4 attacks, so they're making very unfavorable trades into it. That I think in villain in particular, I am loving take captives and that battle tank as much as possible.
All right, our final card, 7 cost. Choose sides. Choose a friendly non-leader unit and an enemy non-leader unit. Exchange control of those units. And this is a rare.
What a weird card.
Yeah.
I'm so confused where they came up with 7 for this when you can just destroy the unit for 6. That I'm like, what do you have on your side that you're wanting to gift them and take theirs instead? That, like, you can do some nuts things. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you take your little Warzone lieutenant and trade it for their Arquitens cruiser, and you're like, yeah, I'll take that trade,
Right. It is important that if you don't have a unit out, you can't play this card. That's correct, right?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay, so you can't just get the free, I just take your unit, change of heart it forever. But, you're always trading a 1 or 2 drop for their bomb card. It is actually really good. I will give it credit. Like, in Limited in particular, swapping those and just getting their bomb card for not free, but I don't know. You get some flexibility into like what you're taking, and usually if they've upgraded something quite a bit, you're thrilled.
Right. Yeah.
So
definitely a bomb. I mean, this is definitely one that I would consider taking very early on if I think I'm going green. It's not always great. So that's the one part where you're like, oh, if they just got a bunch of weenies out there, but still feels pretty solid.
Yeah. A quick resource if I draw this early, but if I see this way late into the game, I'm feeling good for swapping it. So good card. Not like the most like, oh my gosh, crazy card, always take it, but solid.
Yeah.
So that's
all
green.
Right. We did it. That's all your green cards. So now you know how to draft green for your next draft. And let us know what you think about this, and if we should keep doing this with other colors, and just trying to improve and help your draft game. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.